Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're doing good. As you would have guessed by the title, this is a book recommendation video where I explored different genres. Actually, I noticed that I was kind of stuck in a loop with my reading. I was picking up books from same-ish genres and very similar themes. To a point, it wasn't exciting anymore. So I decided to do a little experiment, 7 days, 7 genres. Now, the goal wasn't to finish every single book, but just to explore how different genres make me feel, the moods they bring up, or even, the perspective they open up for me. So I thought, why not challenge myself? And I did a week of reading different genres just to explore different writing styles, different worlds, and maybe, discover something new about my reading habits. So in this video, I am taking you through all the books I picked and what the journey felt like. So for day 1, I started with historical fiction and I picked up The Paris Architect. This book is set in Nazi-occupied Paris during the Second World War, and the story follows this architect Lucien, who is just initially trying to survive the war and is not very concerned with the politics and the morality. But later into the story, he somehow gets pulled into this very dangerous job of designing hiding spots for Jews, secret compartments, false walls, and even hidden passageways. And from there, this becomes the story about courage and fear, betrayal, and what it actually costs to stand up for someone. And I think what I loved about this book was how beautifully it blended architectural creativity with the real tension, because every time he's designed a hidden spot, I was holding my breath like, oh, will it be discovered? The pacing of the book is fantastic. I was initially thinking of reading this book across the week, but I finished it in 2 days. That's how gripping it was. If I talk about the themes, it's really about moral choices, how ordinary people decide what they're willing to risk in extraordinary times like war. I think this book also shows how fear and self-preservation can sometimes clash with compassion and courage. And I think this book also reminded me why I love historical fiction so much, the way it makes you feel history and not just read about it. And I think I would put it in same space as The 20th Wife or The Hungry Tides by Amitav Ghosh, because these books also made me fall in love so much with the storytelling that is rooted in real context. Should you read this? If you are somebody who really enjoys history or is exploring World War II themes, I think you can start out with this one because it's very accessible, very gripping. It's emotional, but also not that heavy, so I think you can really enjoy this one. And if you like historical fiction, please drop some recommendations for me in the comments down below. For day 2, I jumped into something completely different, political satire. I picked The Master and the Margarita, which is, by the way, classic Russian literature. And the story is set in Moscow in the 1930s under the Stalin's regime. The story is wild. So there is this devil who arrives in Moscow and he's disguised as a foreign professor. And he starts exposing everyone, greed, hypocrisy, and the corruption that is in the Soviet society. Alongside this, there is this parallel story running about a master who has just written this one novel on the Pontius Pilate, and he is now facing censorship. This master has a lover called Margarita who sort of deals with the devil, who helps him get out of the whole mess. And there is a lot that is happening in the story. So you've got satire, there is religion, there is politics, there is a lot happening, everything tangled together. What's fascinating about this is why Bulgakov wrote it. During his time, there was this harsh censorship. That means anybody criticizing the government openly could basically be destroyed. And he uses a lot of satire and absurdity and magical realism as a mask to write about the government and everything that was happening back then. And beneath that bizarre, chaotic events is where this book really becomes, fearless critique of the tyranny and the conformity. And reading this book felt like constant shift of moods, because there was times when I was really laughing, and there were times when I was just sitting with just how real it felt, like even today. And I will admit that parts of the book are very confusing, but I also feel that's the charm of the book, because it's one of those books that keep unraveling more, eventually. If you're somebody who likes satire or magical realism, or just wanted to explore Russian literature, you can do this, because this is less intimidating than Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. So it might be a good place for you to start reading Russian literature. For day 3, I went with tragedy, and I picked The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I actually got to know about Morrison from a book club, and this was my second book by her. I cannot emphasize enough on how angry this book made me. So the story follows this young black girl called Pecula, who is living in America in the 1940s, and she grows up in poverty, and all her life she has heard how ugly she is, and her deepest wish is to get blue eyes, because she feels when she has blue eyes she would become beautiful, lovable and worthy. And the story deals with a lot of racism, colorism, self-hate, and how society's standards of beauty can impact a child so much that it can completely destroy their sense of self. And I feel while it is Pecola's story, I was also relating it to the insecurities, my own insecurities that I have, and the feeling of not being enough, or the feeling of changing something about ourselves just to fit in. It is universal, and the way Morrison writes about it is in a very raw format, so much so that it doesn't hit you in your brain, it hits you in your gut. And I don't want to spoil what happens in the story ahead, but it left me heartbroken and restless. And while I was reading this book, I was also thinking about, like, you can also choose to answer in the comments what you think about it. Should we read more books like these, books that make us angry or uncomfortable? Are these the ones that we should be reading more often? For day 4, I picked up a mystery, The Cat Who Lived High, and I'll be honest, I picked the book because of the title. So the book is about a journalist and his 2 Siamese cats who get involved in solving a murder that happens in a high-rise apartment building. The setting of the book is quite quirky and fun. There's a lot of mystery. There are characters and 2 cats who somehow help solve the crime. But here's the thing, I read most of this book while I was commuting in the metro, and because of that I think I was kind of lost, and I was not I could not sink into the story the way one should be while they're reading a mystery. So I was not able to finish this one. But hey, the point of the challenge was not to finish, but to pick up a new genre, and I am so glad I did, because I feel mystery is not my comfort genre, but I'm glad I picked up the book and read something. I hope to finish it someday. But I mean, it was worth dipping in, so I can pick up a mystery once in a while. I think that counts as a win. For day 5, I picked romance, or well, contemporary fiction with a heavy dose of romance. I picked Normal People by Sally Rooney, and so this book follows 2 characters, 2 teenagers who live in a very small Irish town, and they have a very complicated relationship that stretches into their adulthood. It's a lot about love, friendships, class indifferences, intimacy, and about how two people, they keep finding each other and losing each other over time. What I liked was Rooney's style of writing. It's very conversational, very easy to read, and you can, it's the kind of book that you can read very quickly. But it also made me reflect on the messiness of human connections, and I was also thinking about the kind of messy connections I have had with people. Um, but while a lot of people liked this one, I honestly could not understand what the hype was around about the book, and for me it was okayish. It did fine. But if you are somebody who likes character driven stories about love or connections, miscommunication, vulnerabilities, it might be a good easy peasy read. Day 6 was such a surprise. I picked Attention All Shipping, which is a travel memoir, and oh my god, I loved it. So it's about this one author who is traveling across all the regions he has heard as a kid in a BBC forecast, which is a very iconic UK ka radio forecast about the weather at sea. And he turns this whole very dry sounding thing into a very witty and a fun travelogue. And while reading this book, I kept thinking, I wish I had read this before I went to UK, because it gives you such nostalgic and layered feel about a place. And if you've ever loved British shows or podcasts, I think you can also feel oddly connected to the book. It's definitely not the kind of book you can finish in one sitting, because I had to Google a lot of references, places, because he packs in so much detail, geography, history, and the culture. And I think that also makes this book really great, because it was quite nerdy in the best way. And it also made me think that this book would make such a great documentary. I mean, just imagine following this author on his journey visually. Who should read this? If you love traveling, if you've ever felt like Bunny from Ye Jawani Hai Diwani, if you like adventures, I think this book is for you. And honestly, it made me a fan of travel memoirs, and I will definitely be picking more of these. If you have recommendations, drop them down. Finally, for day 7, I picked modernist literature, because I really wanted to push myself into reading something classic and something that I've been putting off aside for a while. So I picked Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence. This book is like a semi-autobiographical situation, mostly based on, I think, Lawrence's life itself. So the story follows this guy called Paul, who is a young growing man working in a mining town in England, and the complicated relationship he shares with his mother. So she invests all her love and ambition on him, and that also sets the foundation for the kind of love, desire, and relationships he shares with women in his life. Now, full honesty, I did not finish the book. I mean, I have read only a few chapters so far, and I think it's definitely one of those books that demands a lot of patience and slow reading. That is it. 7 days, 7 genres, and 7 very different journeys. Looking back, it also made me realize that in the process, it became less about reading a book and more about exploring myself as a reader, because I was in my comfort zone reading similar books, and this really helped me push out of that comfort zone, and I realized I was missing out on so many things. But yeah, I would love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments, if you were to do a similar challenge, which books you would pick, and if you have any recommendation for me, also drop them down. I will definitely dive into those as well. Thank you so much for joining me in this little literary adventure, and don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that. Until next time, bye, happy reading.